Hi Potters. So today what we're going to be talking about is glaze combinations, and we're going to start off with talking about one of the first rules that you should know about glazes. You should already know this. You should not dip a pot more than once if you're dipping your pot, and dip glazing means that it's going to be fully in the bucket. So what happens is if you dip your pot more than once, either one, if you're just doing the same bucket, it will end up being too thick and drip down in the glaze kiln, or two, if you're going between buckets, it will end up cross-contaminating. So for any of these glazes, you don't want to dip more than once. Now, the exception is with these glazes. With Texas two-step, you can put on licorice dipped first and then dip it in marshmallow afterwards. But you have to be very careful not to dip incorrectly in those cases, because these are super sensitive to dripping. Now the main thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was glaze brush combos. So while you can't dip twice, you can combine glazes by brushing on top of one another. And so I've made this handy dandy little test glaze to help you guys as a tool. So what I've done is I've thrown a normal cylinder and I've cut out a section of it so that you can see the inside. But the main purpose was so that you could see the glaze combinations. And the way this works is I started off by brushing the glazes underneath, sideways. So if it's standing upright, the sideways gets put on first, and you can tell what's on the side, on each roll by the names all along the side, and each little name correlates with the row it's on. And then second, I brushed 2 coats on top, and you have, once again, each column with a name on the top that correlates. Now, be very aware of what I mean by coats. You should only have 3 coats of glaze on any given pot if you're brush glazing. And in this case, I did 1 horizontal and 2 vertically. So I'm going to give you an example of how you can use this. Say you like, let's say you like this glaze color. Now you're going to see that there are little squares all the way along. You're going to go over here first and you're going to see, okay, trace over. This was made with nebula on the first coat, and then vertically brushed, you have, from this tile all the way up here, you have red, in this case red-orange glaze, and I brushed that on twice vertically on top. And that's how you can get a glaze that looks like that.
Can you talk about the dripping?
Okay, so when you're firing your pot in the kiln, this went in sideways on its side. And what happens is, while it's in the kiln, it can seriously drip quite a lot. So you see how this bleeds over into the next tile a lot? Well, if you look over at what glaze that is, on the under, that's Aries. And that bleeds and drips a lot in the kiln both ways. So be aware when you're brushing, this will happen more with the glazes that you see like this. So also with Aries vertically, these all dripped a lot more. Everything in this whole column and this row. So you know it's Aries.
So if it's dripping, it's called non-stable, which means it drips.
Yep.
And ones that don't drip are called stable. So what should you do? Let's say you really like this. What should you do? Because we can tell this drips a lot. Can we use that on a pot still?
Yes, you can, but you've got to be careful to make sure that you take off enough of the glaze near the foot that it has a little bit of room to drip if you're going to do that. The alternative, if you just don't want it to drip to the best of your ability, you're going to want to brush it on very thinly. So instead of using, say, 3 coats, you can just use 2 coats.
And it'll change the effect, but it'll be just a little bit different.
Yeah.
The other thing that you can do with a really drippy glaze, if you like that, is you can do it on the inside of a bowl. Why? And not the outside. Because if it drips,
because if it drips, it gets caught in the bottom of the bowl.
Yep. So that's another option. So sometimes people might do that on the inside of a bowl and then do a more stable glaze on the outside of the bowl.